Jesus. Yes, so I've thought about this long and hard and decided it was just about time I discussed this bizarre episode. This same episode introduces mean magical jockey elves into the town of Springfield. And no, this isn't a Treehouse of Horror episode. It's just very, very bad. Allow me to jog your memory on this controversial season 11 episode, Saddlesore Gallactica. The episode opens with a family going to a state fair, a scene we have seen many times throughout the show. In this episode, the attraction that draws them in is watching a horse aptly named Duncan being cruelly dunked into a pool of water. And the guy running this horrible stall does a runner when Wiggum asks for a permit. So the family, always being ones to adopt Springfield's lost and found, take Duncan home. Realising that it will cost $500 a week just to house Duncan, Bart suggests that he should train to be a jockey, racing Duncan to earn his keep. But the horse's lack of confidence didn't win him any medals, so they give Duncan a whole new makeover and attitude adjustment.
Lady, say hello to
Furious D?
The duo then start to win every race, even going as far as moonwalking across the finishing line, which gives the other jockeys a case of the green-eyed monster. So you know what, so far this has been a pretty regular episode, not too bad but also nothing really to note as particularly amazing. Here is where it takes a left-hand turn. All of a sudden, Homer is abducted by the jockeys and transported into their secret lair. And it's here where they reveal themselves to be magical elf-like creatures. Yeah, really.
We're freaks.
The singing creatures tell Homer of their anger over Bart and Furious D's success. Unless they purposefully lose the next one, they will eat Homer's face. Their confrontation ends with them kicking him out of their magical town, leaving Homer as probably dumbfounded as us to question if the whole thing was a dream.
No dream. Lose the race, fat boy.
Even with the threat of his face being mutilated, both Homer and Bart refuse to lose the race and win. Angered, the jockeys go to fulfill their threat, chasing them across town with swords. The mob of elves are then led to Evergreen Terrace, where Marge and Lisa are waiting with water hoses posed. Homer then stuffs the defeated elves into a trash bag.
We'll give you gold!
And to put the cherry on top, President Clinton even rocks up to overturn the results of Lisa's musical band competition that took place at the fair before. So, where do I even start? I remember watching this as a kid and being just as bemused. It felt so unnecessarily warped, unlike any other Springfield episode up until this point. And there are some main points for concern: the ingenuity of the characters, the lazy writing, and jumping the shark when there really isn't any need to. Many place the principal and the pauper as being the pivotal moment where the show jumped the shark. However, I'd argue that this is a bigger contender for that title. The main difference between these two controversial episodes is that the principal and the pauper is considered by both the writers and most of the fan base to be non-canon, as it exists outside of the show's main continuity. A fun, quirky alternative reality, if you will. Which will be just as quickly forgotten as Seymour Skinner himself. You know, the real one.
him.
But weirdly, Saddlesore Gallactica is canon, meaning that in the world of The Simpsons, elves as thriving, existing, and even having the gumption to run out on the streets with swords doesn't so much as bat an eye. Let's not forget that it's these guys that reside underneath the earth, in trees, toadstools, with a bubbling brook made of chocolate. This is in between riding horses on a racetrack who gets jealous by being outperformed by a 10-year-old kid on a horse with a leather jacket. But do you know what the weirdest thing of all this is? It's that only a small number of you are subscribed to the channel, so please do me a favor and tap that subscribe button. It's free, it takes 2 seconds, and it really does help me out, so thank you. Magical creatures up until this point only existed within the confines of the Treehouse of Horror specials, so when we saw characters interacting with gremlins, vampires and zombies,
Dad, you killed the zombie Flanders.
He was a zombie?
we knew that these stories weren't part of the main show's continuity. They were their own separate thing, and almost expected. The magic of The Simpsons, I believed, evolved into greatness from its relatively grounded beginnings. We could relate to the plots, characters, and their troubles that come with them. The first few seasons dealt with realistic troubles each family member could relate to, and therefore varying ages of the audience. The kids dealt with bullying, overcoming being different, and peer pressure. And in turn, the parents suffered from depression, marital issues, and even suicide. These storylines weren't only not outlandish, but also very real and very raw. Let's not forget that when Matt Groening pitched the show, he described it as a drama in animation form. So when the elves randomly appear in Saddlesore Gallactica, it was a very weird situation, and I felt almost mocked by what The Simpsons was. But saying that, we have met fantasy characters before. We met an alien and a Loch Ness monster in previous seasons. And hell, even Dracula is a member of the Republican Party. But that one kind of makes sense. While the Loch Ness monster is ridiculous, it was at least part of the plot, and Mr. Burns learned a vital lesson from the creature. And in terms of Dracula and the alien, they were shown in satire, helping the gag, stating that aliens are ultimately being concealed by elite cults, and Dracula is simply there to poke fun at politics, something the show has done since its conception. And despite being outlandish, the cannibal elves didn't actually add anything, leaving the twist completely pointless. Even if the writers wanted to pursue with the jockeys, they didn't need to be elves, but just simply jealous jockeys. Them being just normal guys would make it even more plausible that they were jealous of Bart's wins and prize money. To put it shortly, it didn't add too much except for a random funny twist, if you can say that. The writer himself, Tim Long, has acknowledged how divisive the episode is, with him even admitting that this is many fans' worst episode ever. And hell, Comic Book Guy even wears a shirt saying the same at the end of the episode. Saddlesore Galactica is very self-referential and meta, borrowing plot points from previous episodes and even calling themselves out on it.
Excuse me, but I believe this family already had a horse.
Later on, when Lisa says to Marge that she might be developing a gambling problem, Comic Book Guy appears again to remind them of the season 5 episode. And some fans even felt personally attacked by this episode. They saw Comic Book Guy pointing out all the flaws as a dig towards them, representing how the show's writers didn't care for what the fans thought.
Anybody care what this guy thinks?
No!
The self-awareness has led some to believe that the episode was made bizarre and derivative on purpose. I mean, it's kind of like a jigsaw already made up of borrowed elements from past episodes. Screw it, let's throw in some jockey elves and the kitchen sink in too, just to shake things up. But jumping back to season 11, as a whole, it was pretty odd. The storylines are more warped and wild than previous seasons. In Blunderdome, we have Homer helping Mel Gibson make a movie. In Missionary Impossible, we have Homer giving a fake donation to PBS, which leads him to being chased out of the country by Mr. Rogers, the Teletubbies, and Sesame Street.
Give us the money!
Elmo knows where you live.
And in one of the most hated episodes of all time, Kill the Alligator and Run, the Simpsons think they have killed a famous alligator and are forced to go on the run from the police. Season 11 really pushed the Simpsons into Crazy Town. This doesn't take away from the fact that I do actually enjoy elements of season 11, and I don't feel it's the beginning of the decline of The Simpsons. I just wanted to highlight the strangeness of this particular episode. Despite it being so absurd, it does have a lot of laugh out loud moments.
I'd rather let 1,000 guilty men go free than chase after them.
Like when Bart tells some snooty spectators to get bent.
That's my third monocle this week. I simply must stop being so horrified.
And when Marge says,
Can't they just bet that all the horses will have a fun time?
Is something I can totally imagine my mum saying, and something that we could really expect Marge to say in this situation. So even though it may not seem plausible that Bart would risk his own dad's face being eaten by elves, at least we can depend on the pureness of Marge and Lisa's ability to fight for the better cause, I think. But come on, I want to know what you think of this episode and season 11 as a whole. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments. But hold your horses, before you go, I want to announce that there's a new book just launched in the UK. No, not the big book of British Schmarz Volume 2, but The Simpsons Secret, a cromulent guide to how The Simpsons predicted everything. Whee! US and Canada have also gotten more stock in too, so grab your copy today before they sell out and embiggen your mind with The Simpsons Secret. And finally, I'd like to say a big thank you to my newest Flying Hellfish member, Rachel Kloosterman. And of course, a big thank you to my other Flying Hellfish members. We have Timothy, One Drama Boy, Steve, Charlie, Sean, Stefan, Robert, Ashley, Glenford, Devin, Gadrak, Stephen, Edward, Anthony, Nicola, Jeffrey, Abby, Dominic, Cody, Chaz, Jeff, Gil, Shadu, Murray, Paul, Henry, Frank, Lucas, Omer, Eric, Thomas, Samantha, Rayleigh, Laurent, Daniel, Brendan, Jessica, Shivendra, Holly, Jason, Molly, Jack, Doug, Eli, David, and Ross.